Rain lashed against the cabin, each drop a hammer blow against the old wood. Wind howled like a beast, shaking the rafters and rattling the windows.
Inside, huddled by a flickering fireplace, sat a lone traveler. His name was Alex, and he hadn't planned on seeking shelter. A wrong turn on a road trip, a sudden downpour, and a stroke of bad luck had led him to this desolate place. The cabin was ancient, its logs blackened with age and its windows thick with grime. Dust lay heavy on every surface, and cobwebs draped the corners like macabre decorations. Alex shivered, pulling his thin jacket tighter around him. The fire, though struggling, offered the only warmth in the chilling air. He wished he hadn't ignored the warnings on those dusty old maps. "Beware the whispering woods," they'd cautioned.
As if summoned by his thoughts, a low moan echoed through the cabin.
Alex's head snapped up, heart pounding. He strained to hear, but the wind seemed to swallow the sound. He told himself it was just the storm, the wind whistling through the cracks. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. He rose and walked cautiously across the creaking floorboards, drawn by a morbid curiosity. The air grew colder as he moved away from the fireplace. Shadows danced in the dim light, taking on grotesque shapes. He found himself in a narrow hallway lined with faded photographs. The faces staring back at him were stern, their eyes seeming to follow his every move.
A floorboard groaned beneath his feet and Alex froze, holding his breath. The sound, amplified in the silence, seemed to hang in the air.
Then he heard it again. A whisper, barely audible, coming from the end of the hallway. It was a low, mournful sound, like someone crying softly.
He took a hesitant step forward, then another. The whispers grew stronger, multiplying. He could almost make out words now, though they were distorted, unintelligible. Fear coiled in his gut, but the urge to discover the source of the whispers was stronger. At the end of the hallway, he found a door, slightly ajar. Light flickered from within, casting dancing shadows on the opposite wall. The whispers seemed to be emanating from this room. He reached out a trembling hand and pushed the door open. The room was small and dusty, lit by a single flickering candle on a rickety table. A musty smell hung in the air, the scent of decay and forgotten things. But what drew Alex's attention was the mirror. It stood against the far wall, tall and ornate, its silver surface tarnished with age. And it was from the mirror that the whispers seemed to be coming. He approached the mirror cautiously, drawn by an unseen force. As he got closer, the whispers intensified, swirling around him like a vortex of sound. He could hear his name now, repeated over and over, a chorus of voices both beckoning and menacing. He raised his hand, his fingers hovering just above the cold glass. The reflection staring back at him was not his own. It was a distorted image, twisted and grotesque, with eyes that glowed with an eerie light.
The figure in the mirror reached out, its hand mimicking his own.
A surge of terror shot through him and he stumbled back. The whispers reached a fever pitch, morphing into screams, pleas, and threats. The air crackled with energy, and the candle flame danced wildly, casting grotesque shadows that writhed on the walls. The room felt as if it were collapsing in on itself. Then, just as suddenly, there was silence. The whispers ceased, the candle flame steadied, and the room fell quiet. Alex stood there, heart pounding, staring at the mirror. The distorted image was gone, replaced once more by his own reflection. But something was different. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy, and the silence, it was unnerving. He reached out again, this time touching the cool glass. As his fingers made contact, a shock ran up his arm, and the world dissolved around him. He cried out, but the sound was swallowed by the swirling vortex of light and shadow that had engulfed him. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the dusty old cabin. He stood in a place that was both familiar and terrifyingly alien. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. The trees around him were twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. And the whispers. They were back, louder than ever, echoing all around him.
He was trapped, lost in a place where reality itself seemed to be unraveling. The whispers were a constant torment, a chorus of voices that spoke of madness and despair. He caught glimpses of things moving in the shadows, grotesque shapes that vanished when he looked directly at them. And then he saw it. Standing at the edge of the woods, shrouded in mist and shadow, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. But he could feel its eyes on him, cold and calculating. The whispers intensified, swirling around the figure like a macabre halo. Alex knew then that he was not alone in this nightmare. He had stumbled into a place of ancient evil, and the whispers were just the beginning. The figure in the shadows began to move, gliding towards him, and Alex knew with chilling certainty that he was facing something truly horrifying.